This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good morning, Dodge. Now, trading screens showed a sea of red on Friday. Massive sell-off capped an otherwise calm week. Are you expecting the market to rebound this week, perhaps as more earnings reports are released?
Melissa, good morning. It should, the direction should be up, but the important thing will be how strong is it. In our markets, we moved into a very unfavorable position after the negative divergence that was flashed last Wednesday, when all our major averages, except for the Russell, could not follow the Russell to new highs. So we're going to be watching very carefully to see if the rest of the market can prove itself. But in terms of what we're looking at, energy, all the stocks that were so bearish in the second half of 2014, they continue to shape up and they become extremely oversold. And in many cases, they're beginning to form double bottoms, which from a intermediate point of view, creates some good buying opportunities. So we're looking at Anadarko Petroleum, British Petroleum, Cabot Oil and Gas, Concho Resources, Piedmont Natural Resources. So there's some good opportunities there. On the negative side, we think many of our retail stocks are topping up from an intermediate term point of view, and they've moved into the early phases of a pullback. Chinese and Hong Kong stocks that have gone into orbit recently are now in the process of correcting, but we're looking to be buying on weakness. And finally, secondary stocks in general have continued to do a whole lot better than their big cap brethren. So let's see if the averages can join the Russell. If not, there will be a pullback, but there's still opportunities on both sides.
Well, Dodge, you mentioned retail stocks. Now, there were 3 high-profile IPOs in the U.S. last week, a couple of which were retail stocks, Virtu, Etsy, and Party City. Now, all of them had superb debuts. Do you think that this brings back some shine to a lackluster IPO market?
Well, yes, Melissa. It was very, very impressive. Party City surged 20%. That was very impressive. Virtu wasn't as impressive, but they are in the Flash Boys environment. They tried to come out last year and they pulled it because it just came out. They were trying to come out with their IPO when Michael Lewis introduced his book Flash Boys. But Etsy is the largest certified B corporation to go through the IPO process, which means that the nonprofit organization B Lab has recognized it as having that an important group of social, environmental, transparency, and accountability standards. So this has a pretty good story for a follow-through. In terms of the market overall, however, I think we're still in the area, Melissa, where interest rates are more important than fundamental values, and if interest rates continue to stay low, and right now there is a perception that our rate increases are not going to happen as quickly, I think that the IPO market will have a real competition from private lenders and venture capital. So we will see if there's more follow-through. But for sure, now we are seeing more buying interest, at least from the short term, in IPOs that are coming out.
Dodge, let's take a quick look at China now. What did you think of China's regulation to expand short selling and limit over-the-counter margin trading? Yesterday, we also saw that Beijing cut 1 percentage point in the reserve requirement.
Well, the street is saying that this has a big impact. Banks financing to brokers through the umbrella trust that they've referred to represent about 1/3 of the total margin financing balance. That is around 500 billion renminbi of the funding needs, and that will have to stop. The FTSE China A50 index futures, which we follow fairly closely, the ones that are for delivery in April, they tumbled 5.1% in Singapore. And the number of new trading accounts that opened in Shanghai and Shenzhen between March 1st and April 1st totaled 5.75 million, or about 205,000 a day. China A-share futures had a 5% hit on Thursday and Friday. So I think that there is going to be a pullback. I think from our perspective over here, we're looking at some of the exchange-traded funds, particularly if there's a short interest in the large-cap stocks, the small-cap. And then there is a Direxion Daily FTSE China Bull and a China Bear that represents 3 times leverage, and we're beginning to see some increased activity on the Bear, which means that there's an expectation that there'll be a pullback. But I suspect that ultimately the market will find a parallelogram to find support, and it will begin to solidify and resurrect itself. But for the short term, we expect to see more downside pressure.
What are you looking out for in the week ahead, Dodge?
It's going to be an incredibly busy week in terms of earnings. We have Morgan Stanley. We have Google. We have an impact from Google from last week that we expect to see. We also have a Greek foreign minister meeting with our Secretary of State Monday. On Wednesday, there's negotiations about Iran's nuclear program. They are set to resume. It's going to be a volatile week. Then on an economic basis, we have our new home sales coming in on Thursday. Greece had self-imposed a deadline to fashion its reforms necessary to unfreeze the aid, and that deadline is on Friday, so we expect to have some activity based on that. I think what we're going to be watching are the events and the news that happens, Melissa, but more importantly, we are going to be watching the market's reaction to the news. Right now, the short term has some negative weight in it right now, so there's going to have to be more proof to the wrong side, to the upside, to the positive side, in order for the market to resurrect itself over the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Dodge, always a pleasure. That was Dodge O'Dolan, Chairman and Chief Investment Officer of Landon Fuse Capital Managers over in New York.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.